Do you guys agree with, I was just sitting here thinking about how I kind of think 50% of parenting is really us parenting ourselves and being connected with our own internal family and our own parts.
Totally.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really easy to get focused on a child's behavior and how do you manage it and how do you get them to do what you want them to do. And I think that's the, not the correct path for really establishing a strong relationship with your kiddo.
Well, it's like that Jamaican proverb. There's probably at least 3 parts I can work with.
Yeah,
that's
right.
Not helping that behavior.
Right. Right.
I think we also have this innate desire to control. Earlier when you said, if there's a lot of power in parenting, and so it makes us feel like, oh, I can control something. And when you talked about just naming the parts and taking care of our own parts, it's less control and more internal authority or responsibility.
Right.
Really,
Right.
Instead of power, I have a responsibility.
Right.
And the invitation simply of a breath. Just before I speak, let me just take this breath. Usually parts just show right up in my system of here we are.
A pause. Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
I think, Darren, there's a part of me that just wants to build on what you said, because I think there's that, it's about when we don't do the inner work, when we don't examine, when we don't explore. Because there was a part of me ages ago, somebody said something, children should be seen and not heard, and I was raised in that.
Yeah.
And so I remember Great Aunt Hepzibah, right? And if you went to visit Great Aunt Hepzibah, who's a dreadful cook, Great Aunt Hepzibah, she predates World War II, right? And I would have to literally sit and not be seen and not heard, or she would get angry, and she would shame my mother, right? Yeah. So I would literally sit, this 8-year-old boy, sitting on his hands so that he didn't move for hours. Right? And the powerlessness of that. I'm powerless, I have to sit here and endure.
Yeah, and I don't matter.
Yeah, and I'm not welcome and everything, So then, of course, I'm going to have a part as an adult where I don't want to feel helpless, I can feel in control of this, right? And without examining where that need comes from, why would I need to control a child? Oh, that's what I learned. And then there's other part of me learned, well, that's how you be in control, that's how you feel powerful.
One of the this just made me think what you were saying, one of the common things that I face in my practice is parents who believe that spanking is effective because it gets the result that they want. And I've heard over and over again over the years of, well, I was spanked and I turned out fine.
It worked for me.
Yeah, and it's a disconnect of knowing the impact.
Yes.
The impact of you having to sit and not be heard or seen. There is a long-term impact of that, and getting those immediate results. You're not teaching your child anything, except for if I'm bigger and stronger and older than you, I can hit you.
So I had a lovely response to that. I'm so glad you brought that up, which was, I got spanked and it didn't hurt me, and the response is, yes, it did. It made you an adult that thinks it's okay to hit children.
Right. Yeah.
There's a lot of cultural implications here too, because there's cultures that you're taught this is how you raise.
That's right.
So by saying it's bad to spank really could tap into my whole culture is bad.
Right.
So then we have to really work with that carefully.
Yes, and that's kind of what I was going to say, is that I just like to really focus in on you're the first relationship. So when your child gets older, they're going to look for someone that treats them like you did. They're going to look. So for me, it's would you want them to be with someone who disrespects them, that doesn't hear them, that doesn't validate their feelings, that doesn't allow them to be themselves?
That's a beautiful way to say it and explain it.
That's for me, because there is so much culture around shaming, verbal abuse and physical abuse. For me, it just turned into I'm teaching him what to expect and what to accept. So if I'm mean to him with my words, he's going to grow up and think it's okay for everyone to be mean to him with words. If I disrespect, from a very young age, we talked about respect. And what that looks like and what it means to give respect and receive it. And I'm talking toddler. Let's talk about what it means to be respectful. And what you deserve respect as well. you know, because I think, you know, especially raising a black boy, I don't want him to ever feel like he's not worthy of respect.
And for me, raising a girl, especially, I was so blown away by the Me Too movement, and so many of the women I know that were posting Me Too that I hadn't had those conversations with, and I don't want my girl, I don't want my daughter to believe that she's in any way needs to become part of the Me Too, right? And so if I can raise her with my respect for her, my hope is that when she engages with men, she will demand and expect that respect. Yeah. And if she doesn't get it, she's not going to be interested, I hope.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, to me, parts just recognize parts, like you said, you know. And if I'm respectful to him, he's respectful to me. It's a two-way relationship. You know, there's no need to be defensive on either side. And then when we are defensive, it's like, okay, what's this about? How do we get more connected?
Yeah.
I really love what you said about the spanking, because very often I'll ask parents, what did you feel like just before you spanked your child? And it's just an immediate trailhead to their exile. It's like I felt out of control, I wasn't relatable, all of that pain that they carried of, I'm supposed to know. And it's like, oh, we can work on that.
Yeah.
And powerlessness, because a lot of people don't know what else to do.
Right.
Exactly. Right.
This is all I learned. It's all I see.
Right.
What else is there? You know? Yeah, I think so often our response to powerlessness is protection. Like there's a fear, and I need to externally protect my child. And a lot of people see spanking as their way, like in the black community, we say, I'm spanking you so society won't have to. So it's a way, you know, it's a fear. It's like there's nothing I can do to avoid you going to prison, avoid you being shot, avoid you, you know, succumbing to the pressures of society, and I need to prepare and protect you from that. So, you know, that powerless feeling leads to kind of desperate measures of assuming that we're trying to protect, but really what we're protecting is our own vulnerability.
Yeah.
That's what I've come to understand, is that who am I really protecting? Is this about my son, or is this really about me? And so I've started to like just, you know, get into that and see that if I can help parents foster hope instead of that fear, like, okay, well, what are we hoping for?
And I also think the point you're making about, you know, it can be easy to start judging our parts and to be, you know, feel like, oh, this part that's spanked or reacted is bad, and that when parents can hear it as a protective, that it's protective in your intention, it's very well intentioned, and the result and the impact it has is probably not the long-term result or impact that you want it to have. Yeah. That's important.
Yeah, I think so too, because it takes away then that fear of judgment, right? Like, the therapist is going to think I'm bad for spanking. No, your spanking part, like all parts, has a good intent. Let's see if we can find out what it is, and then see if there may be other strategies, or there may be another way to work with what it's connected to.
Yeah, and the whole thing about, you know, our protective parts tend to create the very thing they're trying to protect from, right? And so you're recreating something, which I think goes into the whole legacy burden and, you know, family patterns that repeat themselves, you know.
And understanding that there's no expectation for perfection.
Right.
We're parents, we get triggered. We've been doing this therapy for years, and we still get triggered, so.
And research says that we just have to be good enough parents 30% of the time, you know?
I like that.
And when I tell parents that, they're like, oh, that's really easy. 30%? Okay, I can do that. You know, that feels doable.
And Leslie, what you said earlier, you know, you may come back to the disconnect or the disruption next day, 3 days later, 7 days later, it doesn't matter. Come back and unpack it, take the responsibility, make the apology if that's what should happen, and it doesn't become the kids to take on.
Right.
Yeah.